both Gandhiji and Mandela recognized the value of youth, not just in a patronizing and idealistic manner that we sometimes tend to do, but for the real significant advantage they represented. And that's strikingly true in today's times. I would argue that Youthful India could very well offer the nation a unique and powerful engine that can drive our global aspirations in the 21st century. What do I mean by that? I mean, we've been hearing the cliche of the demographic dividend for some time, but we actually have one, right? Because 287 million of Indian citizens are in the age group from 10 to 22. Just think about that. That's 28 crores from the age group of 10 to 22. They are the future. When our average age hits 29 next year, in 2020, in Europe, the average age will be 46. In Japan, the average age will be 47. Even in the USA, which we always think of as a youthful immigration-fueled country, it's only going to be 40. And it may grow up further if Mr. Trump keeps more young people out of his country. Now, according to the ILO, by 2020, there will be 116 million young Indians in the job starter age group of 19 to 23, whereas even in China, there will only be 94 million. So we have a tremendous advantage. And in the next 20 years, while the labor force in China will shrink by 5% and 4% in the entire Western world, in India, the labor force, people of working age anyway, will increase by 32%. So we're looking at a very significant gap between us and other significant major economies, and that's where the demographic dividend potential lies. But this dividend could be a demographic disaster instead, if we don't actually equip our youth to take advantage of what the world may offer them when they are so numerous. In other words, if we don't give our youth the necessary tools to survive, to flourish, to compete in the world economy, that is to take jobs, to be the workforce for the world that, say, China has been for the last 2 generations. If we can't do that, then we have failed them, because the youth will not then be able to translate their energies into anything globally productive and nationally remunerative. The truth is that 431 million of our compatriots are still illiterate. We have more children in India who've never seen the inside of a school than any other country in the world does. We have 4.3 million child laborers still. Yesterday was the day, 7th of July actually, was the day for the abolition of child labor. And it's sad, we officially abolished child labor decades ago and it's still going on. You know, instead of a kid being in class, he's still going around giving a glass of tea to people in many, many offices and even homes. Chotu chai le aana, right? That's what we do to them. 40% of our children in government schools are dropping out by 8 standards. And that's what they're doing with that. We have, in principle, one of the largest workforces in the world after China, 487 million people. And yet, according to all the studies by FICCI, CII, Business World, we probably have a long list. 2/3 of our employers consistently have reported in survey after survey that they find the available talent unemployable. Right under right? There you are. Now, if we don't actually do better than all this, and that means, for example, improving training. In India, only 2.3% of our entire workforce, forget the young, our entire workforce, only 2.3% has received training in formal skills by comparison with 52% in the US, 68% in the UK. So we don't train our youth to be ready for the demands of the new marketplace, let alone emerging new avenues for future employment like AI, like data management, robotics, blockchain, the Internet of Things. All the implications could be grave for them and dangerous for the future of our country. Now, at the same time, I deplore really the tendency in our country to wait for action from above, because this is the age of internet and social media and Wikipedia. We all like to contribute to everything ourselves. Why do we want to wait for government handouts and government decisions? Why don't we encourage our youth to take their destiny into their own hands? I remember reading a Grant Thornton report which pointed out that India ranks amongst the top 5 countries in the world in terms of startups, and is globally the 3rd largest startup hub in the world, with nearly 800 startups being created in India each year. Now, the fact is that many of these things are being done by people in mid-career, who've done a bit of work and feel they can branch out on their own. Why don't we encourage more young people to start startups? By making it easier for them, by giving them the seed capital, giving them the resources, giving them that initial leg up. Yes, some will fail, but I suspect that far more will succeed than are getting support and backing right now. And with India increasingly becoming an entrepreneurship-driven economy that looks towards innovation as a path to the future, where answers are being found through fresh ideas and fresh thinking, I certainly think that we can take this risk. The average age of startup founders in India is now 28 years, but 28% of all startups are funded by people over 35. So a lot of these are new ones coming up now. And of these, the immense innovative and entrepreneurial spirit of youth can be harnessed to drive the wave of entrepreneurship in our country. There's a new word that's been coined, the millenniepreneurs, probably quite an ugly word, maybe doesn't deserve to survive, but that refers to the entrepreneurs who are millennials, the ones between 20 and 25 years of age today, who are actually starting companies, managing bigger staffs, and targeting higher profits than their predecessors, who were sort of the baby boomer entrepreneurs. Now, the fact is that one could say to the young, yours is a great age to take risks. Because right now, by and large, most of you are not tied down by other obligations, family duties. You can go out, take a risk, start a business, take the risk of failing, because that's the age to do it. Don't do it when you have a wife and 3 kids dependent upon you, and 2 of them in school already. That would probably not be a fair thing to inflict upon a family. But there's an idea for youth. And young women in particular need to be encouraged, because they certainly, instead of being press-ganged into committing their future lives into a marriage and domesticity, this is the age when, before they take any such decision, they should have the courage to explore what they can do by starting their own ventures. I think, seeing Ratan Kaur sitting here, I was at an event in which a number of number of women entrepreneurs were awarded. I was asked to hand out many of the prizes. But I was struck by how few of them were young. That's what I was going to say. Which is not a negative comment. They're all lovely ladies of great accomplishment. But the fact is that we need to see more young women also stepping up to the plate, and not those doing so. So have special awards for the young. So anyway, we need to get the youth involved in all of this, because those who created a distinctive brand India by building phenomenal business empires have tended to be people with family backgrounds, an established structure to work within, and so on. Whereas I think young people will have to really start off at the micro or at small entrepreneurship level before they get to a larger thing. But in many ways, if we give them a chance, give them a break, give them the initial opportunities, I suspect that we will unleash energies that could transform our country. That's only one idea. But the fact is that this is a country where the ideas must more and more come from the young. The country has evolved its demands. When I was young, it was roti, kapda aur makan. When I became a new entrant in politics, the slogan and the demands of the voters were bijli, sadak, pani. And now, of course, the millenniepreneurs will be asking instead for better broadband. Because for this generation, for the most part, certainly in urban India, but also in many parts of rural India, 4G is more important than Modi ji. So we have to encourage that. We really have to give them a chance to develop all of this. And certainly, because I've had the pleasure and the privilege of interacting with so many young people, I see them as the potential future leaders of India. I honestly think people of my generation have to be conscious that we are at best holding India in trust. So I'll conclude essentially on this note that the enterprise, the enthusiasm, the idealism that they've shown in dealing with the problems of the country ought to be harnessed. I've given you one concrete way in which they can be harnessed. I think more ideas should come from the young. You have a lot of young speakers here who are in a position to speak for themselves, and I will not presume to speak for them, but I'll be happy to take a few questions before I escape. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.